So welcome to a very special episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. We have your regular group here in attendance.
Stephen?
Amanda?
Sort of regular, Keith.
Regular enough. And Jimmy, Jerome, whatever. So today is Inauguration Day. Assuming sexual assaults did not jail him yet. Emperor Trump is
somebody's inauguration day, but
Emperor Trump is being inaugurated. We're recording this less than 24 hours after it was announced that Trump won the election. And 1 week after we reviewed the episode Miri, which has not been released yet, is coming up, but you'll hear Stephen and I joke about what happens when Trump wins without thinking.
Joke's on us.
And after we've recorded, 8, 9 episodes of this, talking about how sexism and hatred and not getting along with one another is all a thing of the past from the 1960s, and our modern sensibilities would not allow sexual assault and such things to happen today.
I've been very vocal about that.
Yes, you have.
And then our country turned around and said, yeah, no, we're going to elect a leader that says it's okay.
Yeah, we're good with this.
We don't care.
Real quick, if you're a Star Trek fan that supports Trump, I don't know why, because it goes against everything Star Trek stands for. But if you have an argument you would like to present to us, feel free to email trek@iabdpresents.com. And we will...
Or directly to you.
or directly to Amanda. And we will possibly discuss it on a later episode. But today we just kind of want to talk about what Star Trek in the 60s was all about, what its mission was, and how our society has not changed as much as we like to think it has.
Yeah.
Who wants to start?
I'm still on the verge of tears constantly, so maybe somebody else should start, because this would be a first. In my podcast, The Oscars Are My Super Bowl, I've seen movies in which I cry. I've not yet cried on the podcast, so this might be a first.
Well, we can chant, make her cry. Like, lock her up, make her cry, make her cry.
You know.
We don't have to respect you anymore, Amanda.
Well,
That's been proven.
That's right.
I'm a nasty woman, so...
Now I really want to buy that shirt. I think I may.
Yeah.
Sales are probably continuing to rise.
I'd hope so.
And when this episode comes out, we probably only released a couple of our...
A couple, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we talk a lot every episode, and we kind of put it on Amanda just because she's the woman in the group, but really it's something we talk about every episode is some of the obvious sexism about not just the 60s, but TV in the 60s, especially network TV. Mm-hmm. And then some of the ways Star Trek tried to go the other way as much as it could, and understanding that it's still set in the 60s. And then we're looking at it from a 2016 sensibility and thinking, well, that wouldn't fly now, and this
50
and
years
that.
later.
Yeah.
50 years later.
And
exactly, 50
there's
years.
still obviously a large part of the population that still thinks that way, and we knew that. We didn't know how many, and another part that's willing to look past that, obviously, that kind of sexism, whether it's latent or blatant, or especially the blatant in this instance. So,
I mean, as many people have said today, we're not saying every person that voted for a Trump is a sexist or a racist, but you voted for a sexist or a racist.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of blame that you share there. And those of you that abstained from voting, those of you that voted for Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, you're kind of in the same boat here. I'm sorry, but you are. This was way too important to make a statement.
Which includes several of my very close loved ones.
Me too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not me.
That's good.
At least as far as I know. No, I don't know.
Do you want to tell us you voted for Jill Stein, right? No, I'm just kidding. We didn't ask anybody who we voted. We're just all assuming that we all voted for Hillary.
Yeah.
I'll say it, I did.
Yeah.
I
did too.
Yeah.
But to get back to Star Trek, not our depressing 2016, and then the idea in the future that the races will be not just the races, but they obviously in different episodes they illustrate it with accepting other aliens and infinite diversity and infinite combinations and all the great things about diversity. And again, we right now, especially, I think the four of us and a lot of people in the country that think our way feel like that's been resoundingly put down. Of course, Hillary got more votes than Donald popular, so there are a lot of like-minded people. There's just more on the other side that more than we thought.
More than we thought. A very sizable number of people.
Silent majority, as they're calling it.
Yes.
Because it was missed in a lot of the polls and such, but...
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to
and
admit that you're racist openly.
Yeah.
And then there was talk about shy Trump voters.
Yep.
I didn't see any of them on Facebook, but yeah, it's hard to tell. Maybe I did. Maybe I did. Maybe I did, yeah.
So Facebook purposely only shows us people that we agree with.
This is true, too.
No, I saw a few people, well, certainly during the campaign leading up to it, who were just unabashedly Trump supporters. Mm-hmm. And a few others today who were coming out as Trump supporters, sort of shyly and coyly, saying, well, I don't know. I'm reluctant to even comment on that right now. I've been sort of telling myself that I wouldn't because I don't know if I'm capable of saying something that I won't really regret about that.
I did a lot of that last night on Facebook. I was like, I'm 4 drinks in, and you know what? I don't like having Facebook arguments as it is.
That's why I waited till this morning to post my rebuttal instead of last night when I wanted to say how ashamed I was after a few drinks. And
so, well, the thing that I would have been reluctant to say, I will say, is that I think one of the things that bothers me almost, I'm not sure which I find more objectionable, the people that were blatant about it all the way through, who just clearly didn't really seem to either didn't seem to understand or care, about what statement they were making, versus the people who are trying to say today, post very peaceful sounding unity type things, as if trying to take the high road, as if they've had some sort of moral
high ground on it. Or something.
Now that we've won, and don't hate me because I've done this, and we should be peaceful and working together, and I'm not bad, I'm not bigoted, I'm all these other things, and
right.
You may not be bigoted, but you supported a bigot.
Yeah.
That is the simple truth of the matter.
And I saw that in 2 different ways. There was the kind and gentle, let's get over this and let's come together. And then there was the, you need to get over it, which, the more juvenile people. But
sure. And
I think that's easy to say to some people, but, when we talk about, there's a reason, you were in tears and Colleen and many people, men and women, but especially, if you're a woman and you see this guy getting elected, you're like, what the?
How do 40% of the women in this country vote for him? That is what I do not
mind-boggling.
Get. That's what I don't get out. Any woman votes for him.
Trust me, I don't get it at all. I really don't. And having family members, female family members who voted for him and were very vocal about it, and their response was just Bill Clinton. And I'm like, I never said
that doesn't make any
that
sense.
I never said I love Bill Clinton and I think what he did was okay, and I didn't even say Hillary supporting her husband through that was okay.
But there is a major difference between cheating on your wife and sexually assaulting and bragging about it. Major difference.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
and Bill wasn't even the candidate, so it's a moot point anyway. But even if it wasn't a moot point, there's a major, major difference.
But so about specifically the sexual assault, I have multiple friends and family who have been sexually assaulted by men. I told you, Jim, a story that when I was in Chicago and I was 20 years old and I was standing on the steps of the Art Institute, it's St. Patrick's Day, and a man just walked by me, grabbed my breast super hard, and said, "Happy St. Patrick's Day," and kept walking. That's sexual assault.
And you are not Janice Rand in 1966, so that is not acceptable.
That was 2007.
Well,
and we're now in 2016, and by the time this goes out, 2017. So it's been 10 years since that happened to me. And I have seen so many of my family members be terrified about their status as a woman and ever being able to get past the blame the victim culture that we have in this country. And we've talked about that with the character of Janice Rand in particular, how it's 4 episodes in a row towards the beginning where she's sexually assaulted over and over again, and how we've all been really upset about that. And when we came to the realization that it was 4 episodes in a row, we all sort of look down for a minute, like, oh my god. I mean, we were really struck by that.
Well, and we talked about how people in that era didn't see how wrong that was. Yeah. And we talked about how in this era, 50 years later, we do. And then we find out, definitively proven, that is not how a lot of people have changed.
A lot of people are aware, and a lot of people are aware, or either aren't aware, or aware and don't care.
I told you about my cousin last night in the bar when Trump was announced, gets groped in the bar by a guy who goes, well, it's legal for me to do that now because Trump got elected, and he laughed. And that is what we elected. That is the culture we are facing 1, 2, or 4, or 8 years, as he said. Because he knows he probably won't make it through 4 years, whether he quits or goes to jail or whatever. But he has done nothing but bully and divide us. And the theme of Star Trek, and this is why we're doing this episode right now, is all about uniting and accepting people for their differences. I mean, over and over again, we see the Enterprise encounter alien races and make peace with them no matter how different they are. We've already seen in the first few episodes, Kirk... they encounter an alien that does harm and actually kills people, and Kirk, instead of taking vengeance, takes the higher road and says, we didn't understand you didn't understand us, we're going to move past this, and we're going to go on. Because that's what we do. And it's not PC bullshit, it is having respect for your fellow living beings.
That same theme happens in also, like, The Cage, from the original pilot. Mm-hmm. The idea of, you are different, we're different, we didn't see that, let's move beyond that.
Yes. And instead, we're now just going to kick out the Muslims and the Mexicans and build big giant walls. And Gene Roddenberry would be super ashamed. I mean, 50 years of all these episodes of Star Trek and all these movies, I guess that part of the population didn't watch them. Or at least if they did watch them, they did not get the message.
They were seeing it for a campy sci-fi show,
which is not what it is. I mean, even the newest Star Trek that came out last summer, Beyond, was about working together and getting along.
Which I still need to see. Which
I just watched it.
Came out. No,
yeah, it's on DVD now.
It's on DVD. So
I have it.
Maybe I'll take it with me. Well, I don't know if you trust me.
I would trust you.
Okay.
I got the 3D version. If you want to watch it here,
Steven will abscond in the night. We'll never hear from him again.
No, it's an amazing movie. It's it's the best of the new movies because it's the most like the old movies.
I just watched it a couple of days ago.
Yeah. What'd you think?
I don't know. I need to digest it.
And you can hear my views on it, and also friends Chase and Nathan on the Oscars Are My Super Bowl.
Yes. I was pretty tired, I will say, but yes, I think it was pretty good. There was some interesting things.
There were some things. You can hear Nick and I talk about the good, the bad, and the geeky. We've got multiple network programs that have discussed
and we'll get to it in about
50 years. Not 50 years.
It's almost as though people on this network enjoy Star Trek.
Because look, we make art. We're not a political organization, but you have to have a mission statement, and you have to have a mindset, and you have to have a goal when you're founding any company. And we've embarked on this It's All Been Done Presents to celebrate work and inclusionism and creativity and understanding and tolerance. And I know with It's All Been in Radio Hour, which I write, I have striven to show different types of people and show different settings and balance out strong female characters with some jokes that we make at a certain expense. But to me, our network has an overall goal that we need to stand for.
I think part of the sexism jokes that you make in Universe Journey in particular, because that is, to an extent, based on the idea of Star Trek, the original series. It's highlighting how ridiculous the idea of sexism in 24-25 would be, that we should be beyond that.
And we are, remember, Kake grew up in a world without sexism,
right.
And so he never knew how to recognize it.
That's what I mean.
Right?
With those jokes, and like, out of all of my male friends over the years, you are one of the biggest feminists.
I try.
And I know that sometimes we disagree on things, but you've always been willing to hear my side when it comes to the female voice. And I know that there have been times, because I script edit, that I've mentioned things like, I don't know that a woman would do this or say this, and you've listened to that and you've altered it because you know that you're not a woman. I mean,
It's true.
Yeah.
Much as I might sometimes wish to be.
That's another episode altogether.
That's a whole other. No, that's said relatively in jest. But at the same time, I mean, yeah, they're understanding that other people, and that's why we have the Top Notch Tangler, because as we started to develop these shows, we decided to do Porn Star Detectives, which does play on some female stereotypes and some things.
And I believe in that.
But I also said, if we're going to do that, we have got to balance this out. We have got to show strong, smart, capable females doing great things. And that's why we decided that we needed a superhero. I decided that we needed a superhero series, and that it had to be a woman superhero series. And I'm super disappointed that Marvel and DC have lagged behind in that, and they're getting there, but they have lagged behind. And so from the start, this network was going to have a female superhero.
Yeah. Well, Keith and Marianne and I recently, not from when this podcast was up, but last week when you guys were, and Steven were recording and It's All Been Trekked episode, Keith and his wife Marianne and I were recording an episode for my podcast about Doctor Strange. And we even discussed how, well, Marianne and I in particular wish there had been more females in that movie.
Sure.
But we also discussed, why isn't there a Black Widow movie yet? You know, why aren't we there? And,
I mean, we're getting Captain Marvel, but it's taken how long to get there?
Yeah.
A few weeks. Well, I guess
She's only like the 20th superhero movie they're putting out under Marvel's title.
Technically, that is weeks, just a lot of them.
Yeah, yes, technically you are correct. In the cosmic span of things, it's less than a blink of an eye.
Still, yes. I mean, it does depend on when you mean from when to when.
Right.
I mean, from when the Avengers came out, from when they did superhero movies in the 80s or what, but still, yes.
Yeah. And now we have the responsibility to carry on that Star Trek mission. We have the responsibility to speak up. We have the responsibility to demonstrate what the world should be, depicting it what it should be, not what it is.
Well, and I think that we should also hit on not just the sexism and the inclusivity, but the racism part of what we've seen in this election cycle, and how original series, like, I feel like they're trying to get beyond that, and it has its issues where, I mean, in the one that we watched more recently, Miri, for whatever reason, Uhura isn't there. Like, and that
was a lot of the Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, they were all signed for a certain number. That was logistical, that wasn't racial.
Right.
But even putting a black woman on the bridge was
66.
Yeah, was, at that point...
Well, and Star Trek had famously the first interracial kiss on network television.
And the first homosexual kiss 30-some years later on Deep Space Nine on network television.
Right. So I feel like there's precedence in the series, and even continuing into the most recent Star Trek film. I mean, that more in the gay rights area. But, I mean... The whole idea that it is a multicultural cast, and we've even noted that there have been a few times in the background we're like, yay, look, there's another black person on the crew, or there's somebody else who doesn't just look white on the crew. And, where Star Trek, I feel like, yes, it has its issues in the original series, but as it has gone on, it's tried to do away with that. And when it's dealing, even in, like, Star Trek Beyond, with issues with different alien races, it's not just like, there is an inclusivity, and it's when it's looked at, as we joke in Universe Journey, speciest and things like that. Yeah, it is. It's like, that's not okay. Yeah. It's not all right. And I feel like with the election of Trump, you may say if you voted for him that you're not racist, but he clearly is, and has been consistently racist against multiple people, basically anybody who's not white.
Yeah, and it's especially based on your story, just last night or whatever. It's going to embolden those who already think that way, right, or want to think that way.
That has been my
and act that way.
Biggest concern about that, and the thing that I've been noticing, the things that some of my friends that I haven't necessarily witnessed personally have. However many degrees of separation, like the post I showed you, she also mentioned seeing openly racist things on other walls.
Yeah.
The people are now posting almost mockingly or almost gleefully, saying, "Ha, this is okay now."
It makes you feel. It makes me feel ill.
How much can we, at least a little bit, no, I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around this time, but how much can we say, well, it's been 10 years since we've had a Star Trek series on television? I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Because we had, for so long, we were lucky enough to have multiple Star Trek shows running, and there's a new one that will be coming out very, very soon as we record this spring. Mm-hmm. But, that stuff goes out of sight, out of mind. It's not in the forefront, and then things backslide, and it starts to erode, and you have to constantly make sure it's there at the forefront. And I will say, in Star Trek, I don't recall ever seeing, media people and 24-hour cable news networks.
That's
and I think there's a good reason for that as well, because that has certainly played into the issue. And Star Trek has gotten rid of money, and money in politics has played into this issue.
Sure.
And, I mean, we could pull out details from 50 years of Star Trek all night about the things that Star Trek has erased from this world. Something I don't know if you're all familiar with, I'm sure Stephen probably knows, but if you look at the Star Trek historical timeline, before they got to that utopia, before they got to that perfect world, there was a nuclear holocaust, there was a World War III, there was a period where drugs and entertainment reigned in the 21st century. And we had to get to our lowest point to overcome that and build that better world. Now, that's not what I'm hoping for.
That doesn't make me feel better.
No, it wasn't meant to make you feel better. But I'm saying, I think even then he realized that this was not a short-term fight. This was not something he could erase just by putting a television show on in the 60s that espoused those views. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking that may be what it takes, but hopefully it won't be nuclear war. It could just be, climate change, because clearly we don't care about science or that either. Something that broke today was Trump had appointed a climate change denier as to run the EPA. Yeah. But there's always growing pains anytime you're trying to enact change. And we think after 50 years we're fooled into a complacency that those growing pains are over and that we've moved on, and what we're realizing today and what we will probably be realizing over the next several years of a Trump presidency and or a Pence presidency if he doesn't make it 4 years.
The Marx Engel dialectical always moves left. Everything moves left eventually. And I saw George McGovern, speaking of presidential politics, speak a long time ago, and his thing was all these things that, because at the time I think it was turn of the century, so second Bush had just been elected, and so liberals were feeling pretty low, and his thing was like, well, we did all these things. He's like, we're always moving forward, and they're always moving back. But to your point, you're gonna, and he said this too, you're gonna hit those. There's gonna be, it's gonna come back, and it's just a matter of
how much damage is he gonna do while he's in office? Yeah.
How
much is he gonna turn back the clock on women's rights, on gay rights, on
and I don't even know if he has a passion to do that, but he's gonna hire people
that do have that.
His people that he hires are gonna hire those people.
Yes.
And
I mean, look at the people he surrounded himself with. That's what happens.
I had multiple people text me or message me last night or today, like, oh, so we're back to the 50s now. And that wasn't a great time for anyone unless they were a white, straight male.
Yep.
Well, Stephen and I will work to protect. Protect sounds so patriarchal. I certainly would not ever put myself as like a protector of you guys. Well, but whatever we can do to,
I think it's not a protect. It should be
fight alongside you.
Fight alongside and support.
And support, sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that I can speak for both of us that we pledge to do that.
Yeah, and I think when my thoughts today all day, when I was continuing to mull this over, when I hurt the most was, like we just said, me being a straight white male, I'm probably going to be okay. But I was just thinking of all my other friends who could be really, really impacted by all this.
Yes.
And, I think, myself living in the bright blue bubble I live in, I probably won't be hit by any of this either. And a lot of us in that bright blue bubble will be okay. But we know all those people outside of that bright blue bubble, it's different. And not just a Supreme Court decision or whatever, it's every day, those interactions and what's going on out there. And this right now, it's not going to help. But hopefully, the awareness, if it raises with the rest of us, like, okay, we have to be even more vigilant.
We have to fight back.
Yeah, and raise that awareness and always be there. Will counteract that. But it's hard to be optimistic right now. But that's to get back to Star Trek. That's they're very optimistic. There is a future, and for the 60s and 70s and 80s, all those years. It wasn't, especially 60s, it was that was the hippies and all that, but it was also Vietnam and all these other terrible things. I mean, 68 was a terrible year. So to have that optimism, and then, even when you get to TNG, or even the movies in the 80s, we're talking at a time where, nuclear war was, in theory, not on the brink, but it was definitely something I know growing up in the 80s, or being in high school in the 80s, that's something you thought about constantly, and I don't think I'd thought about that in a long time, really. But last week, or the last couple of weeks, when 538 started showing the race tightening, all I could think of was I kept listening to the Morrissey Every Day's Like Sunday, which is based on the Beach by Neville Shute, the novel, which is about a town in New Zealand where they're the last place to get hit by the radiation. They're just essentially waiting to die. Mm-hmm. And I just was obsessing over that for a week, and then I was like, okay, nope, we're not going to elect him. And now I'm back to that's the insanity of that's my white male privileges. My concern is, well, what if there's a nuclear war and kills me? But again, the day-to-day thing,
well, and he's attacking us on all fronts because he's threatening nuclear war, saying we need to use our nuclear weapons. Yeah. He's, letting climate change worsen. That threatens everybody, especially those people down in Florida that voted for him.
I will say, almost optimistically, when you say those kinds of things, that I'm having trouble believing that he believes those things.
Right.
Really, honestly.
Me too. Right.
And I think that it was sort of like. Almost like word association, free association. I'm going to say all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to pander to these people who will want to hear things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was this marriage and it's happened in the past. Was Rodney Horton in '88 and Willie Horton in '88.
Yeah.
And Nixon as well. This divide and conquer kind of thing, and not the overt racial things like Trump did, but Trump was overt about it. And he got that core energized, and then you hook that up with the regular group that's like, we're going to vote Republican regardless because we know we don't want the Dems to get in there. And this time it was a potent combination. And I'd love for Trump to become that liberal guy that used to be on the Stern Show, and was for gay marriage and all this stuff, and probably still is or doesn't care. It's not something, but
he doesn't care because it doesn't affect him.
Right, but he's got all these people he's hired.
You have to be selfless, not selfish.
Yeah, and that's selfish. So it's just not going to happen.
Any other thoughts before we wrap?
Well, I think in the spirit of Star Trek, going forward, that I guess those who like the ideals of Star Trek, we need to bond together and. Protect, and not protect, I even said that's not the right word, like support one another, and especially your friends who are not white, your friends who are not straight,
who are not male, who are not Christian, who are not
Christian. That's a huge one.
And my big concern is that list is going to get longer
and longer
of things that.
Yes.
For the record, I'm an atheist, so you come to take the women and the gays, take me too.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a country full of straight white men armed to the teeth. It's not going to be any fun.
No.
Yeah.
I will go with the rest of you.
But, basically support one another, and when you see the bigotry in the world, speak up. Don't stay silent.
And I do think there are more of us than them. I mean, obviously, like I said, she won the popular vote.
Right.
A lot of people just didn't come out this time.
Well, and then
you've got your Jill Stein.
The Jill Stein and Johnson voters. Who I know you are upset, and I have my own.
Yes.
But at the same time, they clearly did not want Trump. And when you combine all of Hillary's voters and Stein and Johnson,
not want Trump enough.
Okay.
Yeah. But
if you combine all of those,
I know. Then that's
it's much millions more that did not want Trump.
Yeah. And then there's the people that just stayed at home or whatever. Which
Trump energized, Hillary did not. So,
yes.
There were a lot of liberals, there were a lot of young millennials that didn't come out to vote.
And I think there's that same thing that hit Gore. It's 8 years of this is cool. All right,
whatever.
We got this. It's all right. And then
Democrats win when people show up. Republicans win when they don't.
Yeah.
And that happened.
Yeah.
To a certain extent here.
And they had an 18-month run of nonstop pub for their candidate.
Yeah, that is true.
Free advertising.
The media is not free from blame in all of this.
No, I mean, treating him as a serious candidate, treating his scandals as equal to Trump.
Yeah, it just never happened.
Right.
Well, I had somebody comment on a Facebook post that I made saying a lot of what I've said, basically, all of you non-white, non-Christian, non-straight, non-male friends and family.
That argument keeps coming up.
I love you, I will keep fighting for you. And also that even if you're not racist, you voted in a racist. But I had someone comment, well, I just don't think that anyone will allow him to make these changes. And I said, well, I didn't think that anyone would allow him to be president. But that happened.
Yeah.
So maybe you should be a little more concerned. Yeah. Because I know that person is a female who has been sexually assaulted. So just saying, maybe.
So if you're heartbroken, if you're scared, if you're upset, like the rest of us, join us weekly for a look at what society should be, for our better angels, for what our ideals are. Because that's what Star Trek is. It's even more meaningful now to me than it was a week ago. And I think we have years of this to enjoy together and to lift our spirits and to give us that hope and give us that direction that we need. Star Trek is not just a television show.